today. It's a big family that obviously made this film, so please, if you feel moved to speak to a question that was not asked to you, please jump in at any time. But we're going to start, Juan, with you. I want to talk about the origins of the story, and I mean, it's such a multi-thematic and multifaceted film, so there's probably so many things that went into the inspiration behind this, but there's like an image that I can't quite still get used to in films that are happening more and more now, which is actors in face masks. And I'm sure many things contributed to the inspiration behind this film, but I'm curious as to the situation of our world in the past few years, how much that was a part of the origin of this story.
No, I mean, it's obviously a very specific story, and I think a lot of it is Leland and I are just can spend many, many hours and days just talking about ideas, and we love what we really care about, and trying to find like something that we feel we absolutely love. So there's a lot of search into that narrative, but the story, the inception of the story was at the beginning of COVID 2020. We both were unemployed. We were both struggling significantly, like trying to pay bills and trying to like, you know, like most people when the world shut down, especially as a working filmmaker, there's no sets, there's nothing, there's basically nothing. I live in New York, the rents are expensive. And so a lot of that, Leland was working as a copywriter at an ad agency, and he got fired and said like, it was kind of like this world collapsing around us. And in many ways, it's kind of like where sometimes the best ideas come. And this time we didn't have anything else going on. We could just focus, and that focus into something that we believed on with nonstop, literally just focus on that idea and flashing it, and that's kind of how the story came to be. And the little person angle came from, I had already like a list of interesting characters that I cared about, and particularly I love little people, performers that are, I mean, Peter Dinklage changed the game in many ways, but it's very interesting that they're not, I don't think they're properly represented in cinema. And there is an incredible pool of very talented actors out there that are just outstanding. So from the inception of the screenplay, we knew the story was gonna be about a little person, and he was gonna be the main character, and he was not gonna be your typical little person. He also wasn't gonna be like your likable little person. We wanted to find somebody complex, and then we went into a dive into trying to find this person, and we did audition pretty much. I mean, a significant amount of little people out in the world, like everywhere, and it wasn't. Once we saw Matthew's tape, which is a big story, we were like, that's it. Like, it was like. He did a few reads, and I mean, we just realized we had found like somebody who was gonna take this movie to another level.
And then I suppose the natural progression would then be to you, Matthew. What on your side of things drew you to this project and made you want to do it?
That's a good question. You know, I had a unique job situation at the time as well. I was a personal assistant for a psychiatrist, and they had fled to their Pennsylvania mansion during COVID, and they very graciously offered me their penthouse loft in Soho, Manhattan, as a place of refuge. And so my partner and I ended our lease, and we moved there, and from there I lived and worked during much of COVID, which was complex for me because I did not want to be doing that job, and I was now literally living at the job, but it was a loft anyway. It was weird, but anyway, yeah. So I got this email from my agent. My agents are here tonight. Thank you. Got an email from my agent and said, you know, there's this indie film, and at the time my grandfather was dying, and I was not in a great headspace, and so I didn't even respond for 2 weeks, which is weird because, as my agents know, I respond immediately for most. And so they checked in on me, and they were like, you know, look, they're getting ready to do this if you want to do it. And I said, okay, fine. My partner was like, yeah, this is what you do, just send in a tape. And so I sent in a tape, and we got the call back, and got a Zoom with Juan Felipe and Leland, and that's when I started to have a picture of who I was working with and who I was in the room with in terms of talent and passion and innovation and vision, all of the things that as an actor you literally dream of. And I received the offer, and I again went to my agent, and I was like, "Are we sure? You know, we should do this, right? Like it's a job." But truly, that is, I'll make this short. No pun intended. I got the script, and it was another week before I read it because I was so scared. It was my first, feature, and it was my first, sizable role. And I was so scared. I was so filled with self-doubt that I was getting into something that I was going to ruin. And I called two actors who I love, Dee O'Connell, who just won a Tony Award in June for Dana H, and Gail Rankin from Glow, among others, and we had great conversations, and I remember reading the script that night, and I think I started at 11 p.m., and I read the script, and I did not sleep that night. I was so filled with, I'm gonna get like emotion, I was like so filled with the playground that Leland and Juan Fei entrusted with someone who is so used to, being on the fringe. And so I woke up that next morning and I said, this is it, this is my family, my creative family. And I'm very lucky, I'm lucky my partner really convinced me to send that tape in. So, yeah.
Juan Fei and Leland, I want to kind of bring it back to you for a second. I'm curious because Sarah and Matthew brought these characters to such vivid life on screen. Did the initial conception of them change as each of them were cast and brought kind of their own experience to these roles?
100%. I feel at the end of the day, making a movie is so chaotic and there's so many variables that at the end, like the biggest decision you have to make as a director is you have to cast the right imagination of each actor. And I feel, obviously, when you're casting a movie, you're looking, especially a small movie, and I mean, this happens with big movies, you really don't have full control of who's gonna be your lead. Like, you might send an offer, and they might turn you down, and that's part of it. We've had, obviously, experiences like that. And I feel like we're blessed to have Sarah Hay, because I was looking for, I mean, we got Matthew on board first. We cast him. That was like, I mean, the pool of little people actors he had. I mean, he's a genius. Like, you really like the levels and the dimension. And then what you do is you create a canvas where, like, you do control from the far, but like actors they're making a million decisions. The same way an editor is making a million decisions. And then you have an entire team that is, like, you just have to make sure all the decisions are going in the right direction and that everybody is doing their absolute best and that we're all making the same movie. So I feel like once I casted Matthew, the dimension and the opportunities with Matthew, with that character, open up. And then we started having a million conversations about him. And then when Sarah came in, she actually, by the way, I got rejected by her team. I'm sorry if you're here, but
They're not.
Send an email to.
She reached out to me on Instagram, saying, "Hey, I love the script, I love the visual deck, I love the idea, I love everything, the stock." And I said, "Okay, I need a chemistry. Just give me one read with Matthew before I make the final decision, please. I really wanted to talk to her." And they did a Zoom. I have this recorded. This is gonna be content when the movie comes out. And they did a Zoom call, and it was incredible. The chemistry right away clicked to me like that. And then after that, I focused on building trust with both of them and making sure they believed in me and that they felt that we were supporting them, and we created a very creative environment for everyone.
Do you have additions?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say I think part of what makes Juan Felipe such a special director is the care and the craft that he takes with his performers, because I think there's a tendency to sort of separate some directors. Oh, there's directors who are very visual, or oh, there's directors who are very performance oriented, and what makes him so incredible is that he can blend both, and that he can especially approach each actor where they're at, actors from very different backgrounds, actors from very different experience levels. We had performers in this film who had never been in anything. You look at their IMDb, this is their first credit ever. And then you have performers like Sarah, who are veteran performers who've been nominated for huge awards, who've been in a billion things. And Juan Felipe knows how to connect to each. I'm making faces at it. But Juan Felipe knows how to find everybody where they are, and he knows how to. I think what do you call it? The pinch pull. What do you call it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into directing and stuff. But I feel at the end of the day, it's like building a lot of trust with each of them
and getting them to play off each other.
appreciate it.
Getting them to know how to not only address each of them, but get them to like, okay, now here's where you guys are going to come together.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, like talking about that, I do think actors are interesting, especially this kind of movie. Like at the end of the day, you just have to like make sure that Matthew bites her hard enough, and like vice versa, and like that's kind of like it was a lot of it was a cool game. We had a lot of fun making this movie. Actually, we built a very cool family.
It's very apparent when seeing all of you together. Sarah, we've heard a lot of compliments about your talent tonight, but I want to hear it from your perspective. What did this role represent? Some unique challenges that were exciting to you, or what brought you to it?
I would give anything to do it all again. It's life-changing for me, really. I was a ballerina my whole life, and I got my start on a ballet drama, and I felt like I kept getting offers for the same thing over and over. It was like the ballerina with mental illness, and the ballerina who hates her life and cries all the time, and just anorexia. Like I was like, I need to do something that represents who I am, and I actually feel like I kind of fit more in dramedy comedy. And I never get the opportunity. The only time I ever have was a pilot for Amazon that didn't get picked up, but because the executive got fired for molesting somebody. It was an awesome pilot. George Saunders wrote it. It was awesome. So this is the first time I really feel like I'm getting to represent a piece of me as a performer. It's like Robert De Niro playing Robert De Niro in something like Meet the Fockers. Like I'm actually getting to show a bit of myself, and this is all I want to do. I just want to make movies with Juan. That's it.
Thank you so much.
This is the portion of the Q&A where the actors compliment each other.
I'll go first.
I mean, I just want to preface this by saying this film so turns on the interaction between the two of you, and it's so beautiful to watch. And I'm just curious what you brought out of each other. What was the best benefit of working together? Sarah goes first.
Don't hate me. He's the most brilliant person on earth. You have no idea, because he has no ego, which is something that I learned about a lot during this shoot, because I had a much bigger ego than I thought that I did. And being, I have no training, like no formal training at all, and Matthew is trained and really, really exceptional in his craft and his kind of, it's not seriousness, it's just, you're just so studied, and you're prepared and know what to do, and I'm a little more like flying by the seat of my pants, and he really grounded me into a place where I could feel confident with almost every scene, and also just the ability to trust another actor on that level is so special. And the scene where he's drunk and we're fighting in the hotel room, and I'm having this kind of break, and I'm paranoid, and we shot that in one take, and we didn't do any cuts, and the trust of just being able to, I didn't care what I looked like, I didn't care if the camera hit me, I was so able to just disappear and be there with him, and we didn't have to repeat that horrible, upsetting scene, which
There's literally one take.
it was one take.
That's it.
And
We rehearsed for hours and hours.
I mean, it's just special getting to work with someone who's so talented and professional.
Your turn, Matthew.
Yes, I am Greek.
No, I mean, look, we don't have time to go into my love for Sarah. It's really ineffable, you know, like, I can't really quite mind the words. But, you know, the first time I saw her, she had just flown from LA and she was in Juan Felipe's apartment. You know, it's a whole thing. Juan Felipe's apartment was ground zero for the unidentified objects team. Everyone was working and living and prepping out of the apartment. But she was coming down the hall and she was smashing a tuning fork on her head as she said it was a meditative device. And I was like, I love you. Yeah, I mean, really from the get-go, it was. Juan Felipe had us do this really weird, a lot of weird things, but one of the first weird things is that he had us, point blank, you know, inches apart, face to face, stare into each other's eyes, and say one thing that we noticed about the other person that we loved. And I mean, this is, you know, like 10 minutes after I met this complete stranger. And she said something like, I recognized how stunning her eyes were, how deep her eyes were, and intelligent her eyes were. And then she said, I love your eyebrows. And that confirmed my first sense that I love this person. But no, I mean, to be on set, you know, it was hard, guys. This was we were operating with very, very little of anything, but we had a lot of heart, and that's apparently enough sometimes. And you know, it just the story lended itself to people who, if they were open and if they were vulnerable and if they were showing up to play, would fall in love, right? Because of Leland's script and Juan Felipe's vision. So it's this idea where the circle comes whole. And sometimes it happens in film and stage, and sometimes it doesn't. But I'm obviously very biased, but I know, because I was there, that it was that full circle of people who were ready to play because they wanted to.
You forgot to tell him about as an untrained actor, sorry, I'm just off the cuff here, if anyone's ever taken acting class and tried to pretend they were an animal moving around in a space, that was my first experience doing that, I believe.
Did you choose? Wait, go on stage.
I will never do the flamingo for anybody.
Anyway, they had to explain to me what that actually was used for, but if Winona was an animal, it would be a jellyfish.
So just to give everybody like a lot of context, this is not necessarily a normal process, but we were stuck in an apartment in New York City, and we had we're like, okay, let's prep this. We had one day we were gonna connect, everybody had done COVID tests, everybody and everything, so we all agreed, okay, we're gonna do like trust exercises. We're gonna become, by the end of this, we're all gonna trust each other because we're gonna be embarrassed in front of each other. And we started like basically everybody, including Leland and I, we started playing like chose an animal, and then they chose animals, they went through the entire movie without talking, but like interacting as if they were animals. It's super weird, but it actually, like, it was very embarrassing. Yes, exactly what you can imagine, but it was actually very helpful because I think a lot of the movement and a lot of the interaction they have, even like Sarah was, what was it? You were a jellyfish, and at the end of the movie you see her laying on basically it's a jellyfish that goes dry and has no more water, so it becomes stiff. And at the end of the movie, when they're laying down in the field, she's literally unmovable. She doesn't move. A lot of that came from those exercises of trying to understand the movement and having those conversations. And they were up for doing crazy stuff.
He was a chameleon.
He was a chameleon. Oh my God, it was so cool.
Leland was a jellyfish. I mean,
he was a flamingo.
Leland was a flamingo. Sorry.
No, keep going. I would like to see all the animals now on stage. You've said flamingo so many times, we have to see the flamingo.
Never.
Maybe at the after party over at the.
In hell, I will do the flamingo again.
We have some free vodka out there at the bar. We'll get the flamingo.
It was fun.
Speaking of collaborations and unique collaborations, so Sebastian is your brother, correct, Juan? And also the composer of this film, and I mean, the music is incredible. So I'm interested to hear your approach when you read this story to creating the music and how your kind of unique relationship to each other affects that process.
Well, first of all, this was amazing, and I love working with my brother, and we've been working since he started making film, I don't know, like 15 years ago. But what was very interesting about this one is very different from the process what we had before, where they usually shoot the film, and I get a cut, or almost a long cut, and I just start writing music, and we of course talk about themes and everything, but this one, since I read the script, we started developing ideas, and from like production and all that, I was already, we had conversations and we exchanged like, hey, maybe this music could work. He sent me like samples of things that he liked or that he envisioned, and I would do the same. And so one of the things that started early on was like, well, aliens, let's do synths, and so it was, I worked with like, you know, synths inside the computer, but we're like, well, let's make this like an analog thing. So I went in and started doing research, and I bought a couple of like outboard things. Actually, I got one for my birthday. I was like, what do you want for your birthday? I want a synth. So it was just learning a whole new instrument. And what was awesome was like really not even working to picture, just like reading the script, getting ideas, talking about the themes that we wanted to touch, like the relationship between Peter and Shay, and then Peter and Winona. And like, of course, there's the alien and the like Peter when he trips, and there's all this like soundscapes and things that, like, how were we gonna, how was it gonna sound, and the world that we wanted to create. So very early on, I was sending ideas to my brother, and we were just going back and forth. And I remember at first, I had a very different idea, because I was like, oh, this is a comedy. So I was doing like, we had all this like really fast pace, and I think one of the texts was like some African beats, and it was just like, and so I was going in that direction, like something a lot lighter and fun, and then it's like when our conversation is just like, this is like a lot more like grounded, and it's like out of this world, and like how can we create this thing. So we just started finding that. So by the time they got to editing, we had a whole library of sounds. Some were like fully accomplished like ideas, like 3, 4, 5 minute pieces. And then some others are just loose sounds and weird noises that I created in the synth, and I drove my wife insane for a few months. But it was great, because by the time they started editing, they were already incorporating it. So I could take it also from there and continue like polishing it and just bringing it and making it whole, because there were some ideas that were working great. So how can we tie all these themes together? And the melody that we hear in the beginning is the what plays at the end. And there's a theme from Shay every time we go to the lake, it comes back. So like all that, I love working with themes, and I think it's great that subconsciously we can connect to different characters that way too.
Yeah. I'm curious, I'm gonna give you a bird's eye view question, because I'm hearing you all talk about, obviously indie filmmaking is difficult and incredibly hard, and you have no money to do so much. But I watch this film and I see such a sense of control and such beautiful polish, and I'm like, is it apparent on set that you're making something this special, or does that come later?
No, you know it right up front. Yeah, that's whenever you have a gem right in front of your face, that's where that's where you put all your money, that's where you put all your effort, that's where you put everything. But it's not an effort of one person, it's an effort of the whole team, Masha, Beanie, Paola, everybody that is standing out there, like, without any of them, like, everybody is like, it was a fucking teamwork. I'm sorry for my words.
This is not
like,
that true.
It's like,
Yeah, you have to get the right people.
It's just, what can I say? Everybody say everything else,
They took all the answers, but I want to see, we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions from the audience, so I want to give a chance. Yeah, right here.
There were so many brilliant and beautiful and heartfelt moments in the film, but two that stood out to me that I'm curious to know more about, both creatively and on the performance Peter has this true self-respect conversation, which is so perfect in every way. And so I'm curious a little bit more about that set of moments, both creatively and perform-wise. And then the other one was that super sweet, tender moment that Peter got to have with his cowboy in the bar before it all just ripped our heart out. But very grateful you gave us that moment, and I'm curious more about that process.
Do you want to take this one, or do you want to?
Yeah, I can start with it for the first set. First of all, thank you so much. I'm glad that you liked the film. For that sort of first set of moments that you were describing, it was really important to us from the start that we were, it almost sounds like sort of a Mad Libs approach, but we wanted to tell the stories of two characters who were not just one kind of outside. We didn't want it to be a political film in the sense of like, oh, this is the film about like this person and their one issue. We wanted like each character to be struggling with multiple things because everybody's struggling with multiple things, and intersectionality was such a huge part of the filmmaking process. So for me, as somebody who worked previously on projects with sex workers and it involved sex work and storylines, that was something I wanted to continue because especially I think living here in Los Angeles, that's such a part of the fabric of the city that is still treated in such an intensely taboo way, and it seemed like a great opportunity to have that be a part of a story and a part of a character's life and struggle, but without centering it entirely in the narrative, without having it be like, oh, it's a film about that, oh, it's a character about that. It's like, oh, no, that is something that goes on in many people's lives. It brings with it sometimes certain challenges, but is not the entirety of the character.
And to add to that, I feel like it's kind of like, I grew up in Colombia, very conservative culture, very like, I mean, sex workers are literally looked down upon in the craziest way. So it kind of like Leland and I, a lot of the conversations was like, okay, how can we like stick it up to that kind of like point of view and bring and make a movie about like kind of bringing it to the foreground and question like our belief systems. And if that is happening here in LA, that is super liberal town, imagine the rest of the world, like, and it's kind of like taking the humanity out of just because of what you do. That was a big part of the conversation. And in terms of the bar scene,
Maddie, you gotta speak to that.
Well, I want to really fast. I just want to point as an audience member, and what I've heard from a couple of friends, that line that Winona has where she says, "I'm a sex worker," that's a thing that I do, and she so brilliantly delivered that line. I think it's a really one of the most beautiful moments in the story because that is the story. Essentially, we are not one thing, right? One thing does not define us, and so that underlying a thing was really profound. But you can speak more on that. The bar, look, it was a tough day. I mean, this is what I'll offer in terms of the bar because I don't know the bar. I want the bar scene to let it be organic and live in your minds. I don't really want to mess with that. But I will say an example of why this team is so beautiful and so collaborative, and perhaps as my career continues to progress, something that I'll really grow to appreciate when there's more time and money at stake. But you know, it was shot in 3 sequences, right? The initial meeting, the dance, and then the gut punch. Well, there were 2 scenes at the bar and then 1 on the dance floor. The plan was to shoot both scenes at the bar and then go to the dance floor. Well, I was very scared that I was not going to be able to bridge that story in that way. And I said to Juan Fe, I said, look, I know this is going to be extra work for Vinny and the crew that's already working on fumes, but if possible, it would mean the world to me if we could shoot this linearly. And that would mean a lot of setting up, breaking down, setting back up on a very slim time. And they said, 100%. That's what we're going to do.
A lot of people got really mad at me that day.
That's what we did.
it was
A lot of people.
Worth it.
It was worth it.
But and so that because of their collaboration, because of their willingness to collaborate, it allowed me as the actor to try and access everything that I felt I saw in my mind on the page. And I would imagine it would be significantly more difficult if they were not open to that. And it was a beautiful day.
cannot overstate how scary that bar was, by the way. They didn't know what we were filming there, and this bar had like a giant banner of like Trump riding a tank, like out
They were-
of
They,
my
they,
house.
they were selling T-shirts in the front. The first thing you saw when you walked into the bar was a T-shirt for sale. It was Trump on a motorcycle and Hillary Clinton in the midst of falling off. And Trump's back says, "If you can read this, the bitch fell off." And we came into that and shot that scene.
And
Two
the
male
only
lovers, two male lovers.
We
with
need to
their
pick
dance-
some extras out for sure, but
Yeah.
we made the scene out.
The extras were sincerely drinking at 9 a.m. They were like, we can film there as long as we don't let any of the regulars, like, they can just like be in the background of the scene doing what they're doing.
Well, unfortunately, I am getting the wrap it up signal, so I want to thank everyone here for sharing your beautiful work with us and for joining us here at Outfest, and thank all of you for coming.
Drinking over there.
We do have a quick turnover for the next film, so please proceed to the atrium for more fun times and flamingo impressions.
We can
And
talk
get
more
drunk.
on that. Feel free to drink.